Good evening, everyone. So, we are going to continue with our discussion on guarantee. Last time we were able to finish until Article 2053. Right now, we're going to tackle Article 2054, and uh, for this discussion, we are going to try to finish up the whole article on guarantee. So, Article 2054. A guarantor may bind himself for less but not for more than the principal debtor. So we have already discussed before that a guarantee is an accessory contract that is reliant on the principal obligation or on the principal contract. Therefore, the guarantor's liability must not be more burdensome than the uh, debtor's liability. Diba sa guarantee, if nakalimutan nyo na may dalawang parties, diba? Si A, si creditor, si D, si debtor, and then meron si guarantor. Si guarantor yung mag-guarantee ng obligation ni debtor kay A. Sabihin niya, mababayaran yan. I promise you. No? Hindi ibig sabihin nun na ginaranti niya mas burdensome ang liability niya. Dapat mas mabigat pa rin ang liability dapat ng principal debtor. No? Kaya ang sabi niya dito, a guarantor may bind himself for less, meaning, let's say for example, if the whole amount of the debt is, let's say for example, 1 million, he may guarantee 800,000 or 500,000 as the case may be, no? Both, sabi dito, both as regards the amount and the onerous nature of the conditions. Therefore, if let's say for example, itong 1 million is walang interest. Let's say for example, itong 1 million is walang stipulation for interest, hindi pwede na itong 800,000 na i-guarantee ni guarantor is merong interest. So, dapat wala ding interest kasi dapat hindi mas burdensome kay guarantor. Dapat lagi mas burdensome kay debtor. Okay? I hope that's clear, no? So, hindi dapat mag-exceed ng amount ng inutang yung i-guarantee ni guarantor. Dapat mas less or the same or parehas lang yung nature ng obligations. Should he have bound himself for more, his obligation shall be reduced to the limits of that debtor. Diba? Let's say for example, baliktarin natin ito. Another example, ibahin na lang natin, no? Same amount, 1 million ang amount ng utang, but the amount of the guarantee is, let's say for example, 1.5 M. I guarantee 1.5 M. No? So kung ginarantin niyo 1.5 M, hindi ibig sabihin na kapag nag-default si debtor, liable si guarantor for 1.5 M. Liable lang siya for the amount of 1 million. Kung ano lang yung extent ng limits or nung utang nung original amount ni debtor. Kasi ginaranti niya lang na mababayaran yung original amount. So that is Article 2054. I hope that's clear. Article 2055, a guarantee is not presumed. Okay, so gaya nga ng sabi natin, ang guarantee is an accessory contract, no? Hindi lahat ng contract merong accessory contract, therefore hindi pinapresume na merong nag-exist na guarantee, no? It must be proven that there has been an executed contract of guarantee. It must be expressed, meaning kapag sinabi mong express, hindi siya implied, no? Either may contract yan, so most probably there's a written instrument and cannot extend to more than what is stipulated therein. So balik tayo dun sa 2054, kung nakalagay lang dun is an amount of 1 million ang ginaranti and the amount of that is 1 million, it cannot exceed than what was stipulated. Meaning, by the virtue of a contract or an agreement talaga, you are bound by your agreements or your stipulations. Kung ano yung stipulations nyo, meaning kung ano yung pinag-usapan nyo, dun lang kayo bound. Hindi pwedeng much more than that. To the second paragraph, if it be simple or indefinite, it shall compromise not only the principal obligation, but also its accessories including the judicial costs kapag mayroong lawsuit, provided with respect to the latter that the guarantor shall only be liable for those costs incurred after he has been judicially required to pay. Itong latter yung sinasabi niya dito refers to the judicial cost. Okay? So meaning, the guarantee or the total amount of guarantee may not only compromise of the principal obligation daw. Siyempre, kasalan na dyan yung all its accessories. Siguro, the principal obligation is 1 million and there is a corresponding interest. Kasali ang interest dyan, kasali din ang judicial cost. Pero, liable lang si guarantor for judicial costs if there's already a judicial demand. So, kasi ang sabi dyan, no? The guarantor shall only be liable for those costs incurred after he has been judicially required to pay. So, when there's a judicial demand, there are judicial costs, dun lang siya liable for judicial costs. But, generally, is liable for the principal obligations and all the accessory amounts that he may be liable as part thereof, plus judicial costs. If later on, the creditor will pursue judicially the obligation. Article 2056, one who is obliged to furnish a guarantor shall present a person who possesses integrity, capacity to bind himself, and sufficient property to answer for the obligation which he guarantees. So, meaning, ito yung kumbaga qualities or requisites ng isang guarantor. Meron dapat siyang integrity, capacity to bind himself, and sufficient property to answer for the obligation na i-guarantee niya. Diba sinabi natin before that a guarantor is subsidiarily liable to the creditor. Meaning, kapag subsidiarily liable, si debtor mo na ang liable, then kung hindi makabayad si debtor, saka lang liable si guarantor. No? Ganun nag-a-apply ang subsidiarily liable. Therefore, hindi lang integrity at capacity to bind himself, dapat meron din siyang property to pay for the obligations. Kasi nga, sinasabi mo na kaya niyang bayaran, therefore, kung hindi niya yan mabayaran, liable ka rin. Siyempre, gusto mo magtiwala yung creditor sa iyo, di ba? Ginagaranti mo eh. So, as simple as that, no? The guarantor shall be subject to the jurisdiction of the court of the place where the obligation is to be complied with. Speaks about the venue, no? So, which court? The court of the place where the obligation is to be complied with. Okay? So, that is Article 2056. So, the guarantor may be furnished by the debtor, but it must be accepted by the creditor. No? Ina-accept din yan ng creditor. Kaya nga titignan din integrity, capacity, and property to bind or to pay for the obligation. 2057, if the guarantor shall be convicted in first instance of a crime involving dishonesty or should become insolvent, the creditor may demand another who has all the qualifications. So let's stick first with the first phrase or the first article, no? So, if kung nabalitaan later on ni creditor na na-convict si guarantor tapos ang crime niya involving dishonesty, yan, gaya ng estafa, di ba? Falsification, yung mga ganyan na crimes. Estafa is nangloloko. So, this is dishonesty, no? Or should become insolvent. So, nag-convict siya of a crime of dishonesty or insolvent, pwedeng, sabi dito, the creditor may demand another will. So, the qualification. Meaning, the creditor may demand that the guarantor be replaced. No? Why? Why? Kasi if hindi niya pina-replace yan, despite knowing this and knowing this, di ba? Later on, he cannot claim or raise this defense kasi nga you have been aware of this pero hindi ka nag-ask for a replacement, no? So dapat magpa-ask ka lang for replacement. The case is expected where the creditor has required and stipulated that specified person should be the guarantor. So this is the second paragraph speaks about the exception. The first the first sentence is the general rule, meaning if na-convict for crime of dishonesty or naging insolvent, pwedeng i-replace, di ba? Yan yung rule natin sa first sentence. The exception is if specifically requested ni creditor yung guarantor, meaning except where the creditor has required and stipulated that the specified person should, meaning kay creditor mismo nang galing na siya ang guarantor, di ba? Ganito, yung scenario kasi is, say for example, AB, creditor, debtor, okay? Then merong guarantor, yung mag-guarantee ng obligation. Pwedeng si B ang mag-provide ng guarantor para i-guarantee ang obligation. Pwede rin kasi na si creditor ang mag-provide. No? Pwedeng siya rin ang mag-provide ng guarantor para mag-guarantee ng obligation. Ngayon, kung siya ang nag-provide ng guarantor, meaning, alam niya na qualified dapat yung guarantor. Kasi siya na yung nagbigay eh. Diba? Ba't ka magsasuggest ng, si Kwan ang kunin mo na guarantor, madaming pera yan. Siyempre, alam niya na madami siyang pera. Therefore, kapag nangyari yan, stop na siya later on to look for another guarantor. Diba? Kasi in the first place, siya yung nagsuggest nun. Pero kung si debtor ang nagsuggest ng guarantor, siya ang nag-furnish ng guarantor, okay, pwede niyang palitan if in case naging insolvent or nag-convict for a crime of dishonesty. Ganun yung Article 2057. Now, let's proceed to Chapter 2, the effects of guarantee. So, mabilis na lang ito. We're going to finish the whole article on guarantee. Okay? So, the first one is the effects of guarantee between the guarantor and the creditor. Lagi tayo mag-stick dun sa example natin para general, no? Para alam niyo yung concept natin. So, the effects between the guarantor and the creditor. So, labas muna sa eksena si debtor. Ano yung effect kay creditor tsaka kay guarantor? Okay? So, ito yung una muna nating titingnan. The guarantor cannot be compelled to pay the creditor unless the latter has exhausted all the property of the debtor and has resorted to all the legal remedies against the debtor. So, sabi natin before, si guarantor is only subsidiarily liable, meaning ang unang liable si debtor, no? Saka lang si guarantor, no? To understand that, dapat daw ma-exhaust lahat ng property kasi kung wala na siyang pera, lahat ng property ni debtor at kailangan lahat ng legal remedies ay ma-exercise mo kay debtor bago maging liable si guarantor. So, dapat gawin mo muna lahat as a creditor gawin mo muna lahat para makakolect ka kay debtor, no? Kung pwedeng magpa-attach ka or magpa-levy ka ng property niya or kasuhan mo siya sa court, gawin mo. No, ang usually na ginagawa, sinasama na si guarantor na ma-filean ng case, no? Ayan. So, yun yung Article 2058. So, hindi pwede na siya kaagad ang pagbayaran mo. Hindi ko sinasabi na hindi mo siya pwedeng kasuhan. Pwede mo siyang kasuhan. Actually, pwede mo silang dalawang kasuhan. Pero hindi mo siya mapipilit na siya muna ang magbabayad. Hindi pwede yan. Dapat si debtor lagi ang unang magbayad, no? Dapat siya ang unang masingil, no? Siya ang unang mag-exhaust ng properties bago si guarantor. Ganun yung Article 2058. And this exception, itong dapat may exhaust all the property of the debtor, this is what we call excusation, no? Benefit of excussion, no? The guarantor cannot be compelled to pay. Pwede mong kasuhan, pwede mong sulatan, pero hindi siya yung magbabayad. Kahit anong gawin mo, hindi siya yung unang magbabayad. Laging si debtor. Okay? Kasi meron siyang benefit of excussion, which is dapat may exhaust lahat ng properties at mag-resort to all legal remedies available against the debtor. After mo nagawa lahat yan, saka lang maging liable si guarantor. Okay? Article 2059, the excussion shall not take place. O, di ba? Sabi ko nila, benefit of excussion. So, hindi daw mag-a-apply yung excussion. Meaning, kung the excussion shall not take place, sabi niya, pwede mong makompel si guarantor na magbayad kaagad. No? Pwede mong makompel si guarantor na magbayad kaagad kahit hindi mo in-exhaust yung properties, hindi mo finailan ng case, no? Pwede mo daw kaagad na pilitin si guarantor. So, ang general rule is meron tayong benefit of excussion. Diba? Meron tayong benefit of excussion. Si guarantor may benefit of excussion. The exception is ito. If the guarantor has expressly renounced the benefit of excussion, meaning winive niya ito or ni-renounce niya. Paano? Baka dun sa contract na pinirmahan niya, nakalagay dun, the guarantor expressly waives or renounces his right or benefit of excussion. Okay? And binds himself solidarily. Ganyan. So, ibig sabihin, pwede mong kaagad singilin si guarantor. Number 2, if he has bound himself solidarily with the debtor, no? Same, no? Ni-renounce niya and he states that he is liable solidarily. In case of insolvency of the debtor, so if the debtor has no more asset or cash to pay the obligation, pwede mong kaagad habulin si guarantor. Kaya ang ginagawa usually, kapag nagpa-file na ng case, dalawa sila. Dalawa sila ang fina-filean ng case. Doon na silang dalawa. Okay? When he has absconded or cannot be sued within the Philippines, no? Meaning, umalis si debtor. Nagtago si debtor, which is, yan usually ang nangyayari kapag madaming mga utang-utang. Mahirap hagilapin. They are evasive, no? So, when he has absconded, meaning umalis siya, therefore, you cannot sue him within the Philippines, no? Unless, meron siyang iniwan ng property na merong nagmamanage or meron siyang representative dito sa Philippines, pwede mo siyang kasuhan. Okay? So, it's really about knowing who the guarantor is. That's why, preferred din na kung si creditor ang magbibigay ng guarantor, kasi later on, siya din naman ang habulin. So, kung kilala siya ni creditor, alam niya lahat ng transaction, ng business ng tao, So, pwede niyang habulin, no? Kasi kung tumakas yung debtor, pwede niyang habulin yung guarantor. If it may be presumed that an execution of the property of the principal debtor would not result in the satisfaction of the obligation. So, number 5 is even though meron pang property si debtor, okay? Pero itong property niya is hindi sapat para mabayaran yung obligation, pwede niya nang pilitin na magbayad si guarantor. So, kaya din favorable na laging dalawa sila ang kinakasuhan, no? Pero just in case na pag nalaman natin later on that the property is not sufficient to pay for the whole obligation, meron ka na kaagad naka-file na case kay guarantor. So, siya na kaagad yung liable, no? So, yun yung exception. So, the general rule, you cannot be compelled to pay, the guarantor cannot be compelled to pay except the guarantor cannot be compelled to pay because of his right to excusation, no? Except if these 5 instances took place: when the guarantor announced it, when the guarantor binds himself solidarily liable, when the debtor is insolvent, when the debtor tries to abscond or absconded, or if it may be presumed that on the execution of the property it is not sufficient or it will not completely satisfy the property left will not be completely satisfy the obligation. Article 2060, in order that the guarantor may make use of the benefit of exclusion ito guys, hindi exclusion, of excussion, you must set it up against the creditor upon the latter's demand for payment from him. So, dito muna tayo sa first phrase ng 2060. Sabi niya, kung para magamit mo daw yung benefit of excussion, okay, you must set it up against the creditor, meaning you raise it as a defense. Okay, you raise it as a defense against the creditor, di ba? Sabihin mo, or you write in your pleading or in your answer, di ba, na you cannot be made liable because you are entitled to excussion or to make use of the benefit of excussion. And point out, so hindi lang yun, you raise it as a defense and then you must point out to the creditor available property of the debtor within Philippine territory sufficient to cover the amount of that, di ba? Since ikaw yung guarantor, lalo na kung ang nag-furnish sa iyo as guarantor is si debtor, kilala ka ni debtor, alam mo yung properties na meron si debtor, i-point out mo kay creditor lahat ng properties na pagmamay-ari ni debtor para yun ang kanilang habulin, no? They can either levy or attach the said properties, no? Para yun yung sumagot sa utang, para hindi ka na maging liable. Ganun lang yun, no? So, yung benefit of excussion, you raise it or you set it up as a defense, and at the same time, while setting it up as a defense, you point out available properties of the debtor na pwedeng habulin ni creditor. You must do that as a guarantor kasi that is for you to be not liable. Kasi kung hindi ka makapag-point out ng properties, wala silang mauthot kay debtor, no? You will be then liable, no, dun sa utang ni debtor. Article 2061, the guarantor having fulfilled all the conditions required in the preceding article. So, if you fulfilled all the conditions in the preceding article, meaning ito daw 2060, kung nagawa mo ito, na-raise mo as defense, nag-point out ka ng property sufficient to cover, the creditor who is negligent in exhausting the property pointed out shall suffer the loss. So meaning, kung nagawa mo yung 2060, no? Nag-raise ka ng defense, nag-point out ka ng properties ni debtor, Pero on the part of the creditor, naging negligent siya, meaning hindi niya nahabol tong mga properties, no? Hindi niya inexhaust, hindi niya ginawa ng paraan para ma-levy or ma-attach itong properties. Therefore, the creditor shall suffer the loss, no? Kasi ginawa mo na yung part mo as guarantor, di ba? You raise it as defense, and then you pointed out all the properties of the debtor, no? Kung hindi na yan, kung meron mang properties at hindi hinabol ni creditor, that is his loss to the extent of the said property. So meaning, if the total obligation is 1 million and the amount of properties available only amounts to 500,000, therefore, he shall suffer the loss of 500,000. Ang pwede niya lang kunin sa'yo is 500,000. No? So maganda yun on the part of the guarantor kasi mabawasan yung utang mo. That's why, in the first place, you must do your job as a guarantor. Diba? You raise it as a defense and you point out properties of the debtor for the insolvency of the debtor resulting from such negligence. Article 2062. In every action by the creditor which must be against the principal debtor alone, except in cases mentioned in Article 2059, okay, benefit of excusation, the former shall ask the court to notify the former shall ask the court to notify the guarantor of the action. So ano yung Article 2062? Dapat daw sa action ni creditor, it must be against the debtor alone. No? So paano mo malalaman kung kinasuhan lang ni creditor si debtor? You are made as a you are notified, no? You are notified being the guarantor, no? But then again, this is under the strict provisions of the law, no? Ito yung sa law, pero sa practice kasi sinasabay na yan, no? Mas maganda yung sabay mo na yan kasi para notice din naman yun, no? I-raise mo din naman as defense, isabay mo na para later on kumbaga as one na lang yung action, no? The guarantor may appear so that he may, if he so desire, di ba? Kakasuhan lang si debtor alone, tas pwede ka rin mag-appear kung gusto mo. Tapos kung gusto mo, i-set up mo yung defense na excusation, di ba? So if you apply the law, sabi dito, kakasuhan mo lang daw si debtor. Pero sa practice kasi, dalawa na yan nakakasuhan mo, si debtor tsaka si guarantor. Kasi kung isa lang naman yan, mag-a-appear pa rin naman si guarantor, isa-set up niya rin yung defense, no? So, that's the difference between practice and itong sa by the book, no? The benefit of excusation mentioned in Article 2058 shall always be unimpaired, even if judgment should be rendered against the principal debtor and the guarantor in case of appearance by the latter. So meaning, malakas yung benefit of excusation. Sabi niya, it must remain or it shall always be unimpaired. So hindi mo pwedeng i-violate yung benefit of excussion ni guarantor. So laging entitled siya doon. Dapat ang una mong singilin at pagbayarin, dapat lagi si debtor, pangalawa lang si guarantor. Dapat yan. Even if may judgment against the principal debtor. So sabi ko kanina, kung kinasuhan mo itong dalawa, tapos merong judgment, okay? Kahit pa may judgment yan, okay, ang primary liable pa rin si debtor. Kahit pa ang sabi sa judgment is dalawa sila liable, no? Si debtor pa rin ang liable muna bago si guarantor. And the court knows that, and yun din naman ang gagawin nilang judgment, no? Laging sasabihin nila dyan na primarily liable si debtor at subsidiarily liable lang si guarantor. Kasi nga, the benefit of excusation as said here under the law shall always be unimpaired. Okay? Article 2063, a compromise between the creditor and the principal debtor benefits the guarantor but does not prejudice him. So meaning, kung ano man ang compromise agreement, let's say for example, naniningil si creditor kay debtor, ang utang is 1 million, pero ang total na sisingilin niya is 1.2 million. Kasi nga may interest daw. Let's say for example, may interest. Nagkaroon sila ng compromise agreement. Ang sabi 1 million. 1 million na lang ang bayaran mo. Okay na ako. It must benefit the guarantor. Meaning, kahit pang original na utang later on, nagkaroon sila ng agreement, tapos hindi nakabayad si debtor, hindi liable si guarantor for 1.2. Liable lang siya for 1 million kasi yun yung compromise nilang dalawa. Okay, yun yung settlement nilang dalawa. Yun yung agreement nilang dalawa. That which is entered into between the guarantor and the creditor benefits but does not prejudice the principal debtor. So meaning, this time naman, entered between the creditor and the guarantor. The compromise is between the creditor and the guarantor, no? Hindi kasali si debtor. So whatever their agreement, it must benefit the debtor and not prejudice him. So same rule applies. No, same rule applies. So kung ano man ang agreement nila, let's say for example, ang original na utang is 1 million, but then again, sabi ni guarantor, baka pwede 800. Nag-meet up sila, naka-agree sila na guarantee na lang is 800. No, it must benefit the debtor. So dapat liable na lang si debtor for 800,000. Okay, so yun yung Article 2063. A compromise is an agreement between two parties principally agreeing on something regarding an issue or a dispute. So kaya na yan, gustong singilin ni creditor si debtor for 1.2 million, pero hindi daw kaya ni debtor, 1 million lang daw, pumayag si creditor. That's their compromise agreement, no 1 million. No? And this must benefit the guarantor and not prejudice him. Same is true with creditor and guarantor compromise. Okay? Article 2064, the guarantor of a guarantor shall enjoy the benefit of excusation both with respect to the guarantor, meaning in case of a sub-guarantee. In case of a sub-guarantee, hindi lang si guarantor ang merong benefits of excusation, pati si guarantor of guarantor or si sub-guarantor, meron din siyang benefit of excusation. Yun lang yung 2064. 2065, should there be several guarantors of only one debtor and for the same debt, the obligation to answer for the same is divided among all. So, stick tayo with the first sentence of Article 2065. Meaning, AB, meaning creditor, debtor, merong guarantor, pero dito several daw. So, maglagay tayo ng guarantor 1, guarantor 2, guarantor 3. So, there are several guarantors, only one debt, the amount of debt is 1 million. Okay, ang sabi dito, the obligation to answer for the same is divided among all. Meaning, their obligations is joint. No? Joint ang obligation nila, meaning they are divided among themselves. So, equally yan. No, equally yan. Kung ilan sila, ganun din mahati yan. Kung 1 million yan, so tig 333,333 sila. No, so tig 333 sila. Okay, so yun yung ibig sabihin ng first sentence. Okay? The creditor cannot claim from the guarantors except the shares which they are respectively bound to pay unless solidarity has been expressed. So, meaning, continuing on this same example, hindi pwedeng singilin ni creditor. Kunwari, insolvent na si debtor, hindi na siya makabayad, wala din siyang properties. Therefore, ang liable na si guarantors. Lahat sila, tatlo. Up to the amount of their share lang, proportionate share, kung tig 3 sila, okay, hanggang doon lang ang singilin niya sa kanilang tatlo. Hindi pwedeng ang singilin niya kay guarantor 1 is 500, kay guarantor 2 is 200, kay guarantor 3 is 10. Hindi. Dapat kung ano lang yung share nila divided by how many they are, yun lang. No? Proportionate share lang. No? Yun lang yung second paragraph, proportionate share. The general rule is proportionate share ng liability unless there is an express stipulation. Meaning, dun sa guarantee contract, ang sabi dito, unless solidarity has been expressed. Meaning, dun sa contract, dun sa guarantee contract, nakalagay dun na all guarantors shall be liable solidarily. Yan. Kung ganun lang nakalagay, ibig sabihin, kahit sino pwede mong singilin. Actually, kahit sino pwede mong singilin ng 1 million. Basta solidarily liable. Okay? Ganun yung Article 2065, first paragraph. The benefit of division against the co-guarantor ceases in the same cases and for the same reasons as the benefit of excusation against the principal debtor. So, babalik tayo sa Article 2059. Meaning, yung benefit of division, yung division na sinasabi natin is yung proportionate share, no? Kung madami sila, yung obligation, hahatiin mo yun sa kung ilan sila. Okay, yung benefit of division. Pero hindi daw yun, wala daw benefit of division if same cases under 2059, meaning kung babalikan natin ang 2059, the guarantor expressly announce it, if he has bound himself solidarily with the debtor, ayan. So lahat yan, kung meron yan, hindi nila pwedeng i-exercise yung benefit of division. Okay? Effects of guarantee between the debtor and the guarantor. So dito naman, kung kanina between the creditor and the guarantor, ngayon naman between the debtor and the guarantor. What are the effects of guarantee between the debtor and the guarantor? The guarantor who pays for a debtor must be indemnified by the latter. So precisely, if the guarantor is the one who will pay to the creditor, therefore he must be indemnified by the debtor. Meaning, since siya nagbayad ng utang ni debtor, babayaran siya dapat ni debtor. No? The indemnity comprises, so ano yung amount na included, the total amount of the debt, the interest involved from the time the payment was made known to the debtor, the expenses and damages. So, ang acronym mo dyan is TIDE. No? The total amount of debt, interest, expenses incurred by the guarantor, and damages due. So, kung binayaran ni guarantor kay creditor lahat, so lahat din pwede niyang i-claim kay debtor. Okay? The guarantor who pays is subrogated by virtue of all the rights which the creditor had against the debtor. Meaning, if the guarantor pays the obligation of the debtor to the creditor, he is subrogated to the rights of the creditor. Meaning, since binayaran niya na yan, tanggalin mo na siya sa equation, si guarantor, siya na daw ang creditor. Entitled siya of all the rights of the creditor. So, pwede niyang habulin yung properties, pwede niyang singilin. So parang siya na ang nagpautang kay debtor. So ganun ang subrogation. We actually discussed subrogation before, no? In-elaborate ko lang, no? Kapag subrogation, the creditor ay the guarantor will be subrogated to the rights of the creditor. Meaning, si guarantor magiging parang creditor na. Okay? Kung creditor na siya, may rights siya. Okay? If the guarantor has compromised with the creditor, he cannot demand of the debtor more than what he has really paid. So, scenario, let's say for example, under this obligation, the original amount of the debt was 1 million. No? Pero, the guarantor was able to make a compromise na instead of 1 million, he'll pay 900,000 cash to the creditor. No? Pumayag naman si creditor, nag-yes naman siya. Okay? So, ang sabi dito sa second paragraph, he cannot demand of the debtor more than what he has really paid. So, kung ang binayaran niya lang kay creditor is 900,000, kahit pa 1 million yung utang, okay, ang pwede niya lang singilin kay debtor is 900k lang. Okay, kasi in the first place, yun lang yung binayaran niya, yun lang din yung extent ng benefit ni debtor. Therefore, yun lang yung i-indemnify niya. Hindi naman pwede na 900k ang binayaran niya, tapos ang sisingilin niya kay debtor is 1 million. 1 million kasi yun yung original amount. No, that is wrong. Okay, that is wrong. Article 2068, if the guarantor should pay without notifying the debtor, okay, the latter may enforce against him all the defenses which he could have set up against the creditor at the time the payment was made. Ito naman, medyo merong bad faith na involved kasi dito. No? Ito naman, the guarantor pays the creditor of the debt of the debtor, no? Pero there is no notification, meaning hindi aware si debtor na binayaran pala ni guarantor, no? Siyempre, kung hindi siya aware, ang alam niya, meron pa siyang utang kay creditor. Ngayon, siyempre, ito naman si guarantor, binayaran niya eh. Tapos hindi niya i-notify ito. Ngayon, biglang singilin na kita. Bayaran mo na ngayon. Filean kita ng kaso. Kasi nga, binayaran ko na. Eh, hindi siya aware. He can raise all the defenses which he could have set up against the creditor at the time the payment was made. No? So, sabihin niya, kung hindi pa due yung obligation, pwede niyang erase yung defense na the obligation is not yet due, therefore I'm not yet liable. Okay? So, he can set up all the defenses that he could raise against the creditor. Okay, so yun yung Article 2068. That's why, kung babayaran mo si creditor, it's important you notify the debtor. Okay, kasi kung hindi, pwede niyang erase lahat ng defense sa'yo kahit hindi ka creditor. No? If the debt was for a period, and the guarantor paid it before it became due, di ba? Kung may term, di ba? Kung may term, let's say for example, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, yung term, kapag hindi pa dumadating yung term na yan, hindi pa siya due. Kung hindi pa siya due, hindi ka pa liable. Di ba? Pero kung binayaran yan before na-reach yung period or yung term, the guarantor cannot demand reimbursement of the debtor until the expiration of the period. No? Diba? Binayaran mo, hindi pa pala due. Diba? Pwede mo kayang singilin si debtor? Binayaran mo naman na. No, you cannot. Diba? Sabi din sa 2068 kanina, he can raise all the defenses that he has against the creditor. Pwede niyang i-raise lahat yan sa iyo as guarantor. No? Liable lang siya kapag naging due na, kapag dumating na yung period na yan. Okay? Exception, unless the payment has been ratified by the debtor. So, meaning, the payment, yung binayad mo, has been concurred or uh, ratified by the debtor. No? Dun mo lang siya pwedeng singilin. No? Pero kung hindi siya nag-agree, hindi niya ni-ratify, hindi siya nag-consent, hindi siya nag-concur, hindi mo siya pwedeng singilin, hindi siya pwedeng maging liable. Kahit ba binayaran mo yan. Kasi nga, in the first place, meron siyang term, meron siyang period. Dun sa period na yun, hindi pa siya liable. Okay? Ganun yun. Next. If the guarantor has paid without notifying, if the guarantor has paid without notifying the debtor and the latter not being aware of the payment, syempre hindi na notify, therefore hindi niya alam, repeats the payment. The former has no remedy whatever against the debtor but only against. Ito naman, very interesting itong Article 2070. So let's draw a scenario. Let's stick with the same suspects. No? Ito, same siya dun sa previous article. The guarantor has paid. He has paid, pero he did not notify the debtor. So hindi niya ni-notify si debtor. Since he did not notify the debtor is not aware of the payment. Ang alam niya, may utang pa siya kay creditor. Pumunta ngayon si debtor kay creditor, nagbayad. So imagine niya si creditor, diba? Tiba-tiba kasi na doble. Binayaran siya ni guarantor, binayaran siya din siya ni debtor. Ito naman si creditor, tinanggap niya. No, medyo may bad faith din kay creditor. Ngayon, since binayaran ni guarantor kay creditor, pwede niya bang singilin si debtor not knowing na nagbayad din si debtor? Hindi. No? Hindi niya pwedeng singilin si debtor. Sinong sisingilin niya? Ang sisingilin niya si creditor. No? Kasi principle din naman of unjust enrichment, di ba? 1 million lang, let's say for example, 1 million yung utang, then naka-receive ka ng 1 million kay guarantor, after that naka-receive ka ng 1 million kay debtor, 2 million. So that is unjust enrichment on your part, no? Therefore, si guarantor, hindi si debtor ang sisingilin niya na, kundi si creditor. There is bad faith on the part of creditor. There is also bad faith on the part of guarantor kasi nga nung binayaran niya, hindi niya ni-notify. So, kasalanan mo din. No? Kasalanan mo din. Nevertheless, in case of a gratuitous guarantee, if the guarantor was prevented by a fortuitous event from advising the debtor of the payment and the creditor becomes insolvent, the debtor shall reimburse the guarantor for the amount paid. So, in case of gratuitous guarantee, so walang bayad, gratuitous. If the guarantor was prevented by a fortuitous event from advising the debtor, so fortuitous event meaning acts of God or any event that cannot be foreseen, or even if it can be foreseen, it cannot be prevented. No, sorry, for fortuitous event from advising the debtor of the payment and the creditor becomes insolvent, the debtor shall reimburse the guarantor. So, sticking with the same scenario, no, pero hindi niya na-notify si debtor kasi nga mayroon daw fortuitous event. No. Kung merong fortuitous event, ang sabi ng batas, pwede niyang bawiin kay debtor. So, kanina hindi pwedeng bawiin. Dito, pwede niyang i-reimburse yung amount kay debtor. Yun lang yung difference ng first and yung second. So, in both cases, nagbayad si guarantor kay creditor without notifying the debtor. Itong si debtor naman, nagbayad din ulit kay creditor na doubling payment. Under the general rule, hindi na pwedeng singilin ni guarantor si debtor, kundi ang sisingilin niya na is si creditor. Okay? Pero kung hindi niya na-notify si debtor kasi merong fortuitous event daw, pwede niya pa rin singilin si debtor. Okay? Lalo na kung insolvent na si creditor. Meaning, so nagbayad lang, nakareceive siya ng 2 million, nagastos niya kaagad siguro. Okay? Pwede niyang balikan na si debtor. Kasi wala naman siyang fault, no? He tried to notify pero merong fortuitous event, di ba? Kung merong bagyo, may baha, it prevented the guarantor from notifying the debtor, di ba? That could be. Pero right now, since dynamic ang changes sa atin, no? It is impossible not to notify anymore. Kahit malayo, you can notify right now through email, diba? Through online communications, no? And it has already been recognized. Okay? Article 2071, the guarantor, even before having paid, may proceed against the principal debtor. The guarantor, even before having paid. So, meaning, yung mga senaryo kanina kasi nagbayad na si guarantor. Ito, kahit hindi pa siya nagbabayad, no? Ay, joke. XX yan. Kahit hindi pa daw nagbabayad si guarantor, pwede niya nang singilin si debtor. Under what instances? Okay? When he is sued for the payment. No? Kung sinama siya dun sa case. So, kung sinama siya dun sa case, okay, meaning, kung kinasuhan silang dalawa, si debtor, tsaka si guarantor, okay, pwede niya nang habulin kaagad daw si debtor. Diba? Maganda yun. Diba? Maganda yun. In case of insolvency of the principal debtor. Okay, so, kung insolvent na si debtor, pwede niya nang habulin si principal debtor. Meaning, insolvent siya as far as the obligation is concerned. Let's say, for example, 1 million. Insolvent siya as to the amount of the obligation. Pwede na niya nang habulin, meaning pwede na rin siguro mag-identify ng properties para ma-attach or ma-levy. When the debtor has bound himself to relieve him from the guarantee within a specified period and this period has expired, no? Since if the period, okay, binding the debtor to relieve him from the guarantee within specified period has expired, pwede niya nang habulin. Meaning, meron daw period, let's say for example, 1 year or 2 years, no? Na hindi pwedeng habulin ni guarantee si buyer, ay si debtor, no? Is nag-expire. Pag nag-expire na ito, pwede niya nang habulin si debtor. Hindi siya sabi ng number 3. When the debt has become demandable by reason of the expiration of the period for payment. So, when it has not only became due but also demandable. So, kapag demandable na daw yung obligation, meaning kung merong period yan, nag-lapse na daw yung period, pwede niya nang habulin, ni guarantor si debtor. No? Kasi this allows for a situation na babayaran na ni guarantor kay creditor. Kasi nga kinasuhan na siya. Kasi nga wala nang pambayad. Therefore, bayaran ko na lang para habulin ko siya. No? Kaysa na makasuhan ako, bayaran ko na lang para wala na yung kaso. Ako magkakaso sa kanya. Okay? Ganun yung idea in these scenarios. No? It encourages the guarantor to pay the obligation para habulin ng guarantor si debtor. After the lapse of 10 years, when the principal obligation has no fixed period for maturity. So, after 10 years, kung walang period of maturity. Okay? Kung walang term, walang period of maturity, after 10 years, pwede nang habulin ni guarantor si debtor. If there are reasonable grounds to fear that the principal debtor intends to abscond. No? Meaning, merong suspetsya o tamang hinala si guarantor na baka aalis sa Pilipinas si debtor, pwede niya nang habulin. Okay? Pwede niya nang habulin. Kahit pa hindi pa siya nagbayad. Diba? Ito yung exceptions. Diba? Generally, babayaran mo na ni guarantor bago habulin si debtor. Pero dito, pwede niya daw habulin kaagad. He sued insolvent, the period to relieve him from the guarantee has expired. The debt has become demandable after the lapse of 10 years if there is no period. When the debtor intends to abscond, when the debtor is in imminent danger of becoming insolvent. So, this one is, you can relate this one to number 2 in case of insolvency. Dito naman, imminent danger, meaning papunta na sa insolvency, pwede niya nang habulin. In all these cases, the action of the guarantor is to obtain release from the guarantee or to demand a security that shall protect him from any proceedings by the creditor and from the danger of insolvency of the debtor. Meaning, the action of the guarantor is to obtain release from the guarantee. So, ang gusto niyang mangyari is ma-relieve siya dun sa liability niya as guarantor. Okay, kaya niya go after si buyer before siya magbayad is para ma-relieve siya dun sa obligation niya or ma-release siya dun sa guarantee niya. Or hindi lang ma-release, so yun yung una, para rin makademand siya ng security na hindi siya makakasuhan, to demand security that shall protect him from any proceedings by the creditor and from the danger of insolvency of the debtor. No? Para hindi siya makasuhan kung papunta na sa insolvency yung debtor. So, yun yung, in all those cases, ang purpose ni guarantor para hindi siya maging liable. No? Para hindi siya maging liable, sisingilin na kita. Imagine, hindi pa nagbabayad. No? Ito kasing scenario dun sa una. Even before having paid. So, hindi pa siya nagbabayad. Hindi pa siya nagbabayad, pwede niya na daw habulin. Meaning kasi, kung hinabol niya na, hindi pa siya nagbabayad, tapos nakasingil siya. Say for example, 500. Diba? And sabihin mo nang yung debt din is around 500 din. So, pwede na bayaran niya na. Kasi nasingil niya na. Okay? Kumbaga, nag-a-act siya as persona ni creditor. No? Although, hindi pa siya liable, no? Pero siyempre, kung maging insolvent na kasi, wala na rin yung benefit of excussion eh. So, therefore, kailangan niya na rin singilin. No? Para kung sino man yung bayaran sa kanila, pwede niya ngayon ipambayad na yan. Para ma-lessen din yung obligation niya, para maka-obtain na rin siya ng release. Okay? Article 2072, if one at the request of another becomes a guarantor for the debt of a third person who is not present, the guarantor who satisfy the debt may sue either the person so requesting, okay, or the debtor for reimbursement. So, anong itong scenario? So, una muna yung usual suspects. Merong creditor, merong debtor, merong guarantor. Pero mayroon pa. At the request of another becomes a guarantor. Sabi natin kanina, si creditor, pwede niyang isuggest yung guarantor. si debtor, pwede rin siyang mag-suggest kung sino yung pwedeng maging guarantor. Pero pwede rin na ibang tao ang mag-suggest ng guarantor. So, pag ang nag-suggest na maging guarantor is a third person, not part of the contract, okay, not the debtor, not the creditor, siya ang nag-suggest kung sino yung guarantor. Kapag later on, binayaran ni guarantor si creditor, okay, binayaran niya na, pwede niyang habulin, sino? Una, pwede niyang habulin si debtor for reimbursement or indemnity. Walang problema dyan. Pwede niya ring habulin yung nag-furnish sa kanya. No? Okay? So, that's the beauty of it as a guarantor. No? Since ikaw ang nagsabi sa akin, na-guarantee ko yan, ngayon hindi pala niya mabayaran, ako napabayad tuloy ako as guarantor, pwede ko rin hingin sa yung reimbursement. Okay? Di kasi ang name nito ay dapat hindi ba natin, wala na, magulo na. Kunwari X na lang, X ang name niya. Okay? X ang name niya. Kung siya ang nag-suggest ng guarantor, kapag binayaran niya ni guarantor kay creditor, okay, pwedeng habulin ni guarantor, generally si debtor, pwede niya ring habulin yung nag-suggest. That is Article 2072. Kasi nga, kumbaga, dito nyo makikita yung value ng trust, no? So, tiwala siya na sinuggest mo na i-guarantee niya si debtor, nung ginaranty niya hindi nakabayad, liable ka din. Okay? Kahit hindi ka part ng contract. Okay? Ito naman, Section 3, effects of guarantee as between co-guarantors. When we say co-guarantors, maalala niyo yung example natin kanina na merong several guarantors. Ayan, sila yung co-guarantors. So, ito yung gagamitin natin for this topic. When there are two or more guarantors of the same debtor and for the same debt, the one among them who has paid may demand of each of the others the share which is proportionally owing from him. So, dito muna tayo sa unang atake. Di ba sabi natin kanina, kapag meron kang several guarantors, they are only liable for the proportionate share. So, kung proportionate share yan, 1/3 lang ang liability nila. And joint yan. So, hindi mo sila pwedeng singilin ng buo or ng more than their share. So, dun lang sila liable for their share. Ngayon, if si guarantor 1, binayaran niya, let's say for example, the debt is 1 million. There is the creditor, there is the debtor. Binayaran niya yung buong 1 million. Okay? Binayaran niya yung buong 1 million kay creditor. Okay? Anong mangyayari? If the creditor accepts this 1 million, itong si guarantor 1, pwede niyang singilin yung 1/3 kay guarantor 2 at yung 1/3 kay guarantor 3. Okay, and then pwede niya rin singilin yung 1/3 kay debtor. Okay, para buo na 1 million yung ma-recover niya. Okay, so ganun yung sa first paragraph. If any of the guarantors should be insolvent, his share shall be borne by the others, including the payer in the same proportion. Meaning, stick tayo sa ganyan, if isa daw sa kanila is insolvent, let's say for example, guarantor 3 is insolvent, okay, they are liable for the 1/3 of the obligation. Since guarantor 3 is insolvent, itong share niya paghahatian nila. So, kumbaga, tig 1/2 sila. liable si guarantor 3 sa kay guarantor 1 at kay guarantor 2. Ganun lang yung second paragraph. Okay? The provisions of this article shall not be applicable unless the payment has been made by virtue of a judicial demand or unless the principal debtor is insolvent. So, sinasabi natin is mag-a-apply lang si Article 2073 if there's a judicial demand, meaning there's a case filed in court, or insolvency debtor. So kung insolvency debtor at marami siyang guarantor, pwede ito. Meaning kapag binayaran ng isang guarantor yung buong amount, pwede niyang singilin yung ibang guarantors. Okay, kung insolvent yung isang guarantor, paghahatian nung natitirang guarantor yung share ni guarantor. Okay? 2074, in the case of the preceding article, the co-guarantors may set up against the one who paid the same defenses which would have pertained to principal debtor against the creditor and which are not purely personal to the debtor. So anong ibig sabihin nitong Article 2074? Relating pa rin dun sa previous article na merong several guarantors. So ang ibig sabihin, the co-guarantors may set up against the one who paid. So yung sa unang instance kanina, si guarantor 1, yung binayaran niya yung buong amount. Diba? Ang sabi natin kanina, pwede niyang yung share nila is tigo 1/3. Okay? Pwede niyang singilin sila. Okay? Pero itong si guarantor 2 at si guarantor 3, pwede daw nilang erase yung defense as a debtor. Okay? So parang naging creditor si guarantor 1, sila yung naging debtors. Okay? Since binayaran niya. So, applying pa rin yung concept natin kanina dito sa first paragraph. No? Since binayaran ni guarantor 1 yung buong amount, kukunin niya ngayon yung reimbursement kay guarantor 2 at guarantor 3. Itong si guarantor 2 at si guarantor 3 naman, pwede silang mag-raise ng defense kung ano man ang pwede nilang i-raise. Pero hindi dapat purely personal to the debtor. Ano itong mga purely personal na mga matters? No? Let's say for example with regards to consent. Consent is purely personal. So kung ang defense ni debtor is there's a vitiation or pinilit lang siya na pumirma dun sa consent, okay, hindi nila pwedeng erase yun as defense kasi hindi naman sila si debtor. Okay, sila yung guarantor. A sub-guarantor, in case of insolvency of the guarantor, for whom he bound himself is responsible to the co-guarantors in the same terms as the guarantor. So meaning, rotating under this same example, only this time, okay, merong sub-guarantor. Meaning, let's say for example, no, there are guarantors, meron ding sub-guarantors. Sabihin mo din, isa-isa din sila, meron din silang sub-guarantors. Para makita mo lang, para maintindihan nyo yung gusto. Okay? So, meron din silang sub-guarantors. No? Let's say for example, si guarantor 1 is insolvent. Okay? Since insolvent si guarantor 1, ang sabi natin kanina is paghahatian nung dalawa yung share niya. If merong sub-guarantor, liable si sub-guarantor 1. Okay, yun lang yung ibig sabihin nun. Kung walang sub-guarantee, ito mag-apply itong second paragraph. Okay? Meaning, it shall be borne by the other co-guarantors. Pero kung merong sub-guarantee, liable si sub-guarantor. Okay, that's Article 2074. Let's proceed to the last chapter of guarantee, extinguishment of guarantee. So, let's start. Article 2076. The obligation of the guarantor is extinguished at the same time as that of the debtor and for the same causes of all other obligations. So we will not discuss this kasi we will discuss extinguishment in case of sale and extinguishment uh, of contracts, no? Same lang naman siya. Ang sinasabi niya lang, uh, kapag na-extinguish daw yung obligation ni debtor, okay, automatic extinguish na rin yung obligation ni guarantor. Saan to nanggagaling itong concept na to? Nanggagaling itong concept na to kasi ang sabi natin before is ang guarantee is an accessory contract. An accessory contract is reliant on a principal contract. Therefore, if na-extinguish yung liability ni debtor, extinguish yung principal contract. If extinguish yung principal contract, extinguish na rin yung accessory contract. Yun yung reasoning nitong article na ito, no? The obligation of the guarantor is extinguished at the same time that the obligation of the debtor is extinguished. Okay? Since accessory lang ang guarantee, reliant siya sa principal contract. If the creditor voluntarily accepts immovable or other property in payment of the debt, even if he should afterwards lose the same through the eviction, the guarantor is released. So meaning, merong nangyari na dasyon, no? Dasyon, hindi siya usually dasyon, no? In exchange for the payment of the debt, so parang dasyon siya. As a payment of the debt, ang binigay is immovable property or other property in payment of the debt. Okay, basta tinanggap yan ni creditor, that is extinguished, meaning the guarantor is released from his obligations. No? Sir, paano kung later on itong immovable property pala ay pag-aari ng ibang tao? Meron palang ibang tao na nagmamay-ari dito sa property. Kinasuhan ngayon si creditor. Ngayon ang nangyari, na-evict si creditor, nanalo itong tao, natanggalan ng possession at ownership si creditor. Liable pa rin ba ulit si guarantor? Hindi na. Kasi ang sabi dito, even if he should afterwards lose the same to eviction. Basta at the time na inoffer yung property na pangbayad at tinanggap ni creditor, release na si guarantor. Okay? Kunwari, after 1 year or 2 years na evict si creditor, hahabulin niya ulit si guarantor, hindi na pwede kasi release na siya sa obligation. A release made by the creditor in favor of one of the guarantors without the consent of the others benefits all to the extent of the share of the guarantor to whom it has been granted. So meaning, there are several guarantors. Pero si creditor daw, ang nirelease niya lang is isa lang. Meaning, let's say for example ito, nirelease niya si guarantor 1. Ano ibig sabihin ng nirelease? Kumbaga, inoki niya na yung liability ni guarantor 1. Diba ang liability niya is 1/3? Sabi niya, wag mo nang bayaran. Okay na to. Release ka na sa obligation mo. Wala ka ng obligation. Ang may obligation na lang si guarantor 2 at si guarantor 3. Let's say for example, the amount is 1 million. Diba? So, their share is supposed to be is 1/3. Pero nirelease niya na yung isa. So, since nirelease niya na yung isa, entitled daw, it benefits all to the extent of the share of the guarantor to whom it has been granted. So kung let's say for example, para hindi tayo mahirapan, 900, hindi na lang 1 million na, wag na 1 million, 900,000. So, tigti 300k sila ng share. Since nirelease na daw itong isa, so wala na yan, ang babayaran na lang nila is 600,000. Okay? So yun yung, kumbaga yun yung na-benefit nila. So since 600,000 na lang yung babayaran nila, ma-benefit sila to the extent of the share of the guarantor to whom it has been granted. So, kung 600 kasi, tigti 300 pa rin sila. Wala silang na-benefit doon. Magkano yung share na na-benefit ni guarantor 1? 300,000. Therefore, bawasan mo sila ng tig 150k para ang liability na lang nila is 150k or 300,000. Okay? So, bakit ganon? Kasi yun yung sinabi ng batas. No? A release made by the creditor in favor of one of the guarantors. So, kung nirelease yung isa, benefits all to the extent of the share of the guarantor to whom it has been granted. So, since 300,000 ang nabawas dun sa utang, okay, 300,000 din dapat ang mabawas dun sa remaining na obligation ni dun sa remaining na obligation na ginagaranti nila. Okay, ganun lang siya. Okay, as simple as that. Okay. Article 2079, an extension granted to the debtor by the creditor without the consent of the guarantor extinguishes. So it's very important. No? Say for example, di ba, si A, si B, the usual suspects with the guarantor. Yung debt is 1 million. To be paid within 5 years. Let's say for example, dumating na yung 5th year. Okay, dumating na yung 5th year, in-extend yung term. So, nagdagdag pa siya ng 2 years plus 2 years. And this extension was without the consent of the guarantor. So, hindi niya alam. No? Ang alam niya lang, after 5 years, dapat mabayaran na. So, dumating na yung 6 years, hindi pa siya, wala naman nangyari. So, ang alam niya, na-release na siya. So, ang alam niya, ang knowledge niya na lang is, okay na, na-release na siya kasi umabot na ng 6 years, wala pa rin claim. No, hindi pala siya aware na na-extend. Therefore, that extinguishes the guarantee. Kasi, wala siyang consent. Okay? Kung meron sana siyang consent, na-extend din sana yung guarantee ng 2 years. Pero since walang consent, hindi ma-extend yung guarantee. The mere failure on the part of the creditor to demand payment after the debt has become due does not of itself constitute any extension of time referred to herein. Meaning, ang ibig sabihin nung orange portion is that let's say for example, yung original no na 5 years, no? 5 years. 5 years after 5th year, nakalimutan na mag-demand ni A kay B. So, umabot ng 7 years. 7 years, dun lang nag-demand si A kay B na bayaran yung utang. Okay? So, si G, ang alam niya, 5 years lang, release na siya. Ang akala niya extension, no, hindi pa siya release. No? Kasi ang sinasabi niya dito, failure to demand by the creditor does not mean extension. So, failure to demand is not equal to extension. Ang extension kasi is binibigay yan ni creditor kay debtor. So, meron silang agreement na sige, bayaran mo after 2 years. Ang failure to demand naman, nag-end na ng 5 years, hindi siya nakapag-demand kay debtor. Yun yung failure to demand. Okay? 2080, the guarantors, even though they be solidary, are released from the obligation whenever by some act of the creditor they cannot be subrogated to the rights, mortgages, and preference of the latter. So ito, stop si creditor sa acts niya. So even if their liability is solidary, okay, marerelease sila sa obligation if because of the creditor, okay, hindi sila pwedeng masubrogate dun sa rights ni creditor. So, ibig sabihin, stop si creditor dun sa acts niya. Marerelease sila. Mawawalan sila ng obligation. Meaning, hindi sila magiging liable dun sa utang ni debtor. That is Article 2080. Okay, so the last article, Article 2081, the guarantor may set up against the creditor all the defenses which pertains to the principal debtor and are inherent in the debt, but not those that are personal to the debtor. Meaning, sinasabi dito, the guarantor may set up all defenses which pertain to the principal debtor. No? So, if later on, na-exhaust na lahat ng properties, na-exhaust na lahat ng remedies, pero hindi pa rin nakakolekta si creditor, okay, si guarantor, since siya na ang magiging liable, siya na ang magbabayad, okay, pwede niyang erase lahat ng defenses na parang siya ang debtor ni A, ni creditor. Okay? Pero hindi yung personal. No? Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, let's say for example, dun pala sa contract na ito, pinilit lang si debtor pumirma. So there is a vitiated consent. No? Pinilit lang. By force or intimidation, pinilit lang pumirma si debtor. Hindi pwedeng erase na although that is a defense on the part of the debtor, original debtor, that is not a defense on the part of the guarantor. Kasi hindi naman siya yung pumirma. Hindi niya pwedeng erase yan ng defense. Okay? Yun lang yung ibig sabihin no? Can raise all defense but not those that are personal to the debtor. Okay? So that is Article 2081. So the next is the lecture on pledge, mortgage, and antithesis. This one we will discuss during our classroom sessions.